Okay, hi everybody. I'm Liz Fenton, and I'm here with my best friend of over 30 years and co-author Lisa Steinke. We've authored 7 books together, including the forthcoming How to Save a Life with the huge ass posters behind us. That comes out on July 14th. And it's a dark, heart-pounding love story with a Groundhog Day twist. And it is available at Warwick's. And you can get personalized copies there of any of our books or pre-order How to Save a Life. And we also have an event coming up with them. And Julie, I'm going to throw it to you.
Good. Lots of stuff going on at Warwick. So hi, everybody. I'm the director of events at Warwick's. I'm Julie Slavinsky. And I see some new faces, so I'm going to go through my spiel here. We are located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. We are actually open for business. So masks on, social distancing, you can come in and browse, buy anything. What I like to say is any way that you can get a book, Warwick's can get you that book. So please support Warwick's in your book purchases, whether it's Kristen's or Liz and Lisa's or anything that you're looking for. We can get you whatever book you need. Kristen, welcome to Rage Against the Minivan. We're so excited that you're here with us tonight. So I'm going to be putting in the buy button links, and then, like I said, any way you can get a book, come on over to warwicks.com. So with that, off to you guys.
All right. Well, Kristen, welcome. We're so excited to have you, and we feel like we have so much to talk about. And here is a little bit about Kristen. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and became the mother of 4 within 4 years via birth and adoption. She is the founder of the blog Rage Against the Minivan and has created several popular humor destinations online, including the popular Tumblr Pinterest You Are Drunk and the hashtag asshole parent meme and Instagram account. She is also the co-host of Selfie, a podcast dedicated to exploring the mind, body, and spirit aspects of self-care. Her book, Rage Against the Minivan, Learning to Parent Without Perfection, was published on June 9th. Welcome. I'm going to pass you to Lisa, who is going to ask the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah, get ready. They're hard-hitting. Yeah, welcome, Kristen. Welcome.
Thanks.
We're so happy to have you.
This is fun. I'm glad to be here.
Just based on that bio alone, we have a lot to talk about. But I wanted to start with the opening paragraph in your book, Rage Against the Minivan. It says, "Dear reader, if you are looking for a parenting book with great craft ideas, amazing time management tools, and motivational inspiration to do more each day, then awesome. There are a lot of those books out there. You should go Google them. This book is about doing less." There's so much to it, but can you kind of give us a sense of what it's about?
Yeah, I mean, I really ultimately wanted to write a book. Rather than giving a handbook on how to do everything right, I really feel like we have enough of that messaging. We have enough messaging around how we could be more and do more. And I felt like moms really right now need a message of like, you are enough and you are doing enough, right? And it's not that it's not that I'm promoting that we all just kind of take a hands-off approach to parenting. Actually, I'm a therapist. I believe in connecting with our kids. That's really important to me. But I think sometimes we need to kind of narrow that focus down a little bit. And so the book really talks about how to learn how to opt into the things that are important to you and how to learn to opt out of some of the things that maybe society or our upbringing are kind of hoisting on us as expectations that may or may not be working for us. So that was really the message that I wanted to get across, but it's also a memoir. I mean, it's also a story of my very, very messy journey to being a parent.
Can you tell us a little bit about that journey? Because that in itself is fascinating. Your story of infertility to adoption to pregnancy. And you said people just really don't get it. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really hard to understand the experience of infertility or pregnancy loss unless you've had those experiences. And I certainly didn't understand them. But, I jokingly called one chapter of the book, How to Fail at Motherhood Before You Even Start, because it really felt that way for me. Like I really had always wanted to be a mom. That had been a big life goal for me. And I had, I'd been able to, up until that point in my life, kind of, have success with the things I tried for. I did okay at school. I got licensed. I had a private practice. And I just kind of felt like, okay, so, checking things off the box, now I'm going to have kids. And that did not come easily for me at all. I experienced infertility, but then really experienced a lot of pregnancy loss, had a very hard time ever carrying to term. So when that was, when that was looking difficult for me, like I might not ever actually be able to carry a pregnancy to term medically, I shifted to adoption, which I was really open to. I actually always had wanted to adopt a child, but then that was really difficult too. And I tell the story of that in my book as well, just that with both of the adoptive children that I have, in both circumstances, it was years of kind of tumultuous, emotional, I'm not sure if he's staying or not. So all of it, all of my journey to even become a mom was about letting go of outcomes and letting go of expectations. And those lessons, as a mom, I think those lessons just keep coming, don't they? I mean, now I have teenagers and it's still letting go of expectations, letting go of outcomes.
Oh my God. So true. I can't wait to get to the teenage portion of this interview. You had the blog first though for what? Yeah. 14 years. So tell us why the blog started and then what made you decide to write a book?
Yeah, I mean, I will say none of it was really purposeful. I just started blogging because that's what we did in 2004, right?
Yes.
This was pre-Facebook, this was pre-Instagram, and people I knew were starting blogs, which were just a place to kind of post pictures of their family and little updates. And I was like, oh, well, I have friends doing this, I'll do this too. And so, initially the blog was just a place where I just shared photos and updates of our family. I talked about where we were at with the adoption process because a lot of people were invested in wanting updates on that. And then, a couple years in, it was like, oh, more than just like my mom and a few friends are reading this. And then I started writing more and more and more. And then it became I actually left my private practice and started blogging full time. It became a job. And then I had for a long time people encouraging me, you should write a book, you should write a book. So I was basically peer pressured into writing a book.
So was I.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother. You were though. It was me. It was me.
Yes.
Well, I was looking for my question on the asshole parent. So your strategy has been to find humor in frustrating parenting situations. Tell us about how putting the wrong straw color into your daughter's sippy cup inspired #AssholeParent on Instagram.
So, okay, there was this one day where my daughter, my youngest child, so my kids are all really close in age, and the oldest 3 had gone off to school, which was a weird thing as a mom of 4 kids that are really closely spaced, because all of a sudden I was with one kid. And I remember like everyone leaves for school and then she's looking at me like, now what? And I'm looking at her like, now what? Like, who do you play with now? Not me. So I was trying to make her lunchtime special during this period because she was kind of lonely. She was used to 3 siblings always being around. And so there was this one day that I was like, let's do a pink princess lunch. And you can put on your princess costume and you can invite your teddy bears. And I, cut her lunch into these perfect little puzzle shapes. And I, sliced her grapes down the middle and I put everything on a pink plate and I made her a pink smoothie and I put it in a pink cup and I set it all in front of her. And then she wanted a straw, and I gave her a yellow straw, and she just laid down on the floor. Like, the day was ruined. Everything's terrible because it was not a pink straw. I didn't have a pink straw. And so, it's just one of those moments where you have to laugh or else you're going to cry because you're like, can I even not do anything right for this child? Like, I really tried. I was actually really trying. So I, took a still photo of her, and I wrote about what happened, and I hashtagged it #AssholeParent. And then other people started using the hashtag, and then it just kind of became this whole thing of parents posting photos of their children, being angry with them for things that really maybe weren't worth being angry over. So,
which is it's almost everything, I would say.
I think it's universal. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, that's why it became so popular. And then you started the Instagram page Asshole Parent,
Yeah.
and it had 1 million followers in 1 month. Is that right?
It was something
Really,
absurd
like a
like that, almost
huge
a
amount.
million.
So obviously there's a lot of us out there that can
Yeah.
relate. And so I think it's hilarious, though, the name of it. I love it. Can we go back a little bit to about the experience of adopting? Because that plays kind of a big role throughout this book. And I was wondering, I mean, I know it's a huge, broad topic, but what kind of advice, I guess, would you give for people trying to adopt after what you've been through?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a big proponent of adoption. I think that the one thing I would say is just the importance that adoption is always ethical, meaning, that you're not adopting a child who, could or should be with their living birth parents, except for poverty, right? Because we don't want to be, that's not, adoption is for children who have lost parents or for whom, their parents are unable to raise them. And so just making sure that, if people are looking into agencies for adoption, that everyone is ethical, that these agencies are, not exploiting birth moms, not taking kids who are just from impoverished families who could otherwise raise their kids with some support. And then, thinking through the cultural aspects, if someone adopts outside of their race, kind of understanding that you then have to be very mindful and very involved in your child's culture. And, my 2 children are Black, so that means that we are very involved in our local Black community to make sure that they have mentors and adults who mirror their experience, because I don't know what it's like to be Black in America. And so I can have talks with them, and I do, and we can watch movies, but there's nothing quite like that lived experience of knowing other people. So just being mindful that, for people who are considering transracial adoption, that there are some adaptations that you have to make as a family if you do that.
Well, you touched on that you have the Black children and the white children, and two of them are actually the same age. One is Black and one is white, right? And they're the 15?
They're the 13-year-olds.
The 13-year-olds. And so you have a chapter called The Myth of Colorblindness, which I think, especially right now, is really important for everyone to read. So if you can tell us more about that. And you also kind of touched on the vastly different experiences your 2 13-year-olds have had, which is pretty interesting too.
Yeah. So we jokingly call my 13-year-olds the twins, but one was born in Haiti and is Black, and then the other is my biological daughter, and she's white, but they were born on the same day. And so it's just been interesting to watch the way that the world interacts with them, even though they're the exact same age. My sons, who are both Black, just tend to be viewed with a little more suspicion. They have been asked if they belong where they are. They have been denied a refill because it was just for paying customers. I've been asked if I knew where these child's parents were when they weren't misbehaving. There's just been, a lot of those, what I'd call microaggressions. So it's not overt racism. No one's running up to them and, pointing out their race or using a slur, but it's just the very subtle kind of like, what are these kids doing here as they're out in the world? And, or one of my oldest, who's 15, he's a skateboarder. As I live in Orange County, so I mean, just about every teenage boy is a skateboarder. It's a huge cultural thing in the town where I live. But he's been threatened with arrest for skating in the wrong place, which none of his white peers have had that happen. So, it's just, they are just treated with greater suspicion, and statistically we see that to be true as well. And that Black boys are often deemed to be older than they are, which is, my boys are 13 and 15, and people often, think that they're adults or treat them like adults. Not in a good way, in a more suspicious way. So those are the talks that we have to have with the boys of like, look, as you're going out in the world, like, you may be and it's very scary, like a 13-year-old brain, a boy, I mean, not the most developed, right? Like still a lot of frontal lobe
Yeah.
growth to go.
I have a 13-year-old boy. I
Yeah.
get it.
But
Yeah.
you know, going out into the world and he's almost 6 feet and like, you know, being assumed to be an adult. And I say that to them all the time. I mean, they leave the house and I frequently say, people might think you're grown-ups, so act like one. You know, that sucks. Sucks.
That's
to
so
have to
much
tell a kid.
pressure. I
A lot
mean,
of
just
pressure.
knowing the how mature or immature my 13-year-old son is, that is
Yeah.
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it is.
And I feel for them. I can't imagine my son would not be able to act like an adult. I mean,
Well, mine don't either. I mean, they are typical 13 and 15-year-old boys.
But
Yeah.
they're having to have some like serious life lessons learned pretty early, which, you know,
Yeah.
especially with everything that's going on right now and
Yeah.
doing that. So
Well, and I'll say, you know, it's interesting with everything going on right now. I mean, this is nothing new for us. It almost feels like we're watching the world catch up with a conversation that we've been having for their entire life. So, you know, I'm devastated by George Floyd's death, but I am grateful for the national conversation. I'm glad that people are finally, it's like yes, guys, this is happening. Like we see this, you know, and the small slights that I talked about that happened to my boys, these small microaggressions, those are the things that lead to what happened to George Floyd. Those are the things, the attitudes and the bias that leads to someone being killed for a counterfeit $20 bill. You know?
yeah, I think, and also I just that's those stories, and just that's what makes your book just the perfect blend of, you know, you have the serious and then you have like the humorous, and you just found a way to weave these all together. I mean, there's no way to even get into the every single thing you put in this book, but I just wanted to remark on that because as I was reading it, I thought, wow, has a great way of just balancing all of these different things, and so it doesn't feel too heavy and it doesn't feel too light. So I just wanted to say that to you.
Thank you. I mean, it was a challenge in writing it because, you know, at the end of the day, it's a humor memoir. And I remember, you know, thinking like, can I talk about race and racism in a humor memoir? Like, does this work? And then I just kind of went with my gut. Like, I feel like it needs to go in. And then, you know, now as the book is coming out in this national conversation around race, I'm like, I'm so glad I stuck to my guns, you know, because I definitely had some folks that were like, I don't know if this should go in there. You know, this is, you know, let's keep it light. Let's keep it funny. So
it still didn't feel like it got too heavy though. I mean, it's an important conversation, but it was handled well, I think.
Well, I tried. Thank you.
So back to the teens, but on another note, you talk about the shock and awe of raising them, and, you know, before this all started, Liz and I were telling you that we have teens as well. Yeah. And you list in the book some of the asshole things we as parents of teenagers need to stop doing. And I just wanted to read a few of them that I found personally satisfying. Making eye contact.
Why would you do that?
Which is so true. Breathing.
Yeah, monster.
A good one. Yeah, like why did you wake up this morning? Attempting to talk to them about their crushes or life goals, which is forget it. Do not talk to me about anything other than what you're giving me for dinner. Totally. And not being there within 2 minutes after they called to say they're ready when you live 15 minutes away.
That one drives me nuts. My oldest has done that to me a few times. He'll be like, I'm ready to go. And then like 2 minutes later, he'll be like, are you here yet? And I'm like,
I'm not teleporting. I'm going to actually get in the car and drive over there.
You know how far this place is from our house.
It's like, what are you know, it's like teenagers. It just, sometimes it's just like, there is no, like my husband and I just this feels like there's no answer to what to do. And what would your advice be, I guess, for parents that are in these situations? How to handle them and not, you know, jump off the
I think I had 3 of those things happen to me in the last 24 hours.
Yeah. I mean, they're so common. Like, how do you just not rip your hair out?
Yeah.
You know, I have found that it's really important to be mindful of, like, I mean, not to get too like psychology on us, but to be mindful of the developmental task of a teenager, which is ultimately to individuate from the parent. And that is, if we look at like what they're supposed to be doing at this age, that is their life task. Individuate, separate from their parents. And the problem is that American teenagers, and teenagers everywhere, but specifically in America, just have some really weird ways of doing that, right? And that looks like rebellion. It looks like thinking everything you do is stupid. But if I can keep my mindset of like, they are doing this to individuate from me, and they are doing this to separate from me so that they can launch and leave home, right? And that part of the reason that they do the eye rolls or the "you're so stupid" is because they over-identify with us as parents, and they feel like if I don't almost like reject or push away, I'll never get my independence. And so when my kids are behaving like that, I try to think to myself, how can I give them some independence that's different from like denigrating mom or right, or like needing to eye roll? Like, what independence can I give them that makes them feel some mastery over being themselves as a separate entity from me? And I feel like that does help some when I can kind of help them with their own identity, if that makes sense.
It does. Sometimes when you're just in that moment of like wanting to just
still super annoying.
Yeah, I have a 9-year-old too who thinks she's a teenager. So like I just have it coming from all sides, but I do try to do that too. Like her brain's still developing.
Right.
She does, she's just trying to get in touch with, her emotion. I try to do it all, but I'm not always perfect at it.
And it's like,
oh, sorry. I was going to ask, is there a chapter in here for how to keep your teenager to keep their cell phone charged when they go
oh my
places?
Gosh.
Is there a chapter in there? I'm watching my daughter on the Stalker app right now while we're here, and every time it's 10%.
Sorry. No.
It's so annoying.
I wish there was an answer for that, but there's not.
No.
What about, so you touched on this in the beginning about opting out, which you also talk about opting in, which I want to ask about too, but you had some things that you listed, and if you can kind of talk about those and then why you think that's important for parents.
Well, I just think as women, we have so many expectations on us as modern moms. We're sort of expected to be these, domestic goddesses and keep our home looking great and, bake and all that kind of, and feed everyone super healthy meals. And then we're expected to look a certain way and be really fit. And then we're expected to like be these like amazing volunteers at the school and show up with the homemade crafts. And, then we're expected to also like, have a job and do all of that. And like, I think as women, we have to look at all of these different roles and kind of choose like one or maybe two that we can master and then kind of let go of the rest. And so for me, I have 4 kids. That keeps me pretty busy. I also have a job. So I had to let go of like, I'm not going to be in the classroom once a week. Like that's a thing that I don't have time to do. Or I'm not going to do the baked goods. Like when that sign up sheet comes around, I'm going to pick napkins every day and I'm going to pull them from my napkin closet that I keep for these purposes. Now, that's not to say that other moms might feel like, you know what, I love volunteering in the classroom, or I love doing baked goods, or I love elaborately planned birthday parties, which is completely fine. And I think that's why it's so important to say individually, like, just for me, what are the things I'm going to opt out of? Like one thing that is not important to me, I'm not a big sports person, right? And I have boys who play sports, but like I didn't want to dive into club sports. I didn't want to spend our weekends on a travel team. Even though my boys are decent at sports, like I didn't want that level of commitment. And so, I said like, hey guys, we'll play sports, but you'll play them at school. You'll be on your school team. We're not going to be on a travel team that takes over our family that, practices 4 nights a week. But there might be another mom who's like, man, I love sports so much and I'd love to give my life over to this. And it's all okay. It's just we each need to personally figure that out because we can't personally do all of it. And then we need to give each other the freedom of like, yay, you do you. Like you're super-
That's the thing right there.
Right?
That's the thing right there is not feeling like, you're being judged or
Yes.
questioned, so I
Yes.
think maybe, yeah.
And I think a lot of the judgment stems from the fact that we haven't figured out what we're opting out of and what we're opting into. And so then what we do is we feel guilt because we haven't clarified for ourselves what we're going to let ourselves off the hook of. And when we haven't clarified it for ourselves, then we feel resentment of the women who are doing those things because we feel guilty, right? So it's like I walk into a class party, there's moms that have been there for 5 hours already. I feel guilt. And then what do we do with guilt? We go, well, she just has no life, or we go to some external blaming. But if I walk into a class party and I go, and I remind myself, Kristen, you opted out of this. You've let yourself off the hook for this because you do, you're doing the school website, or you've chosen not to volunteer at all. If I can be mindful of what I've opted out of, I don't need to judge other mothers when they've opted in.
Yeah, I think owning it. I think when you own it, and I think I had to do that. I think you've had to do that, Lisa. We have a comment here from Jen. She says, me too. I won't be a sports family. I don't want the weekends and weeknights all eaten up. I had that in child with my brother's sport. It's hell. So, but other people love it. Yeah. And so that's with our adult friends. I think we've really had to do that. I think we're all different parents. Yeah. And we've had to be like you do that. Like we do the travels. Like we are that person, and Lisa doesn't do, but like it doesn't, I don't feel like she pretends she's interested in all the stories I tell, which I really appreciate.
I like to hear about the soccer, but I am that parent. I'm exactly the one that was like, I'm not doing this. And especially you with 4 kids. I mean, we had 3 and the older 2 kind of did. And I just decided on the 3rd one, enough. Because it does just, for me, I guess I opted out of that, Well,
and I have 2 into sports and 2 into theater. So if I was going to go hog wild with both, then I would have 2 in community theater and 2 in club sports, and I would just be in the car 24/7.
You wouldn't be able to do it, yeah.
No.
And so it's almost easier just to say,
like we're all just doing all the things at school. You can do all the plays and all the sports at school.
But it's so easy, even when you do certain things, when you, I guess, opt in to certain things, it is still so easy to feel bad when you walk into that classroom and those, they've been there for 5 hours. It is hard to just go, okay. And then if your kid's like, why weren't you here setting up? That's another favorite.
I know.
So,
that is hard. Yeah.
But that's one of the great things about this book is just letting yourself off the hook. And you also talk about opting in, which if you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like, then again, it's like when you clarify what you're opting out of, then you're also clarifying what you're opting into. And so for me, I felt very strongly that I wanted most of our evenings free. That I wanted, I didn't want to be at lessons or sports at dinner time, that I wanted to be able to eat dinner as a family. Now, again, that was important for me. And so when I, and it's that same kind of thing, then when I see other people whose kids are like winning championships at the club league, I remind myself but I made a priority that we were going to be like home in the evenings. Or for me, one thing I care about is music. And so my kids, I do make them do music lessons. And that's I grew up in a musical family. I'm still very musical. And so that's important to me. And so all of my kids, they don't need to be prodigies. Like none of them are actually great at anything, but they can all kind of play guitar and kind of play a second instrument. And, that was just important for me. And again, now I know those are my opt-ins and I don't have to judge anyone else for having different ones.
Which I love. And it was just nice to read that, I guess, to see someone, it must be why, I'm sure this is why your blog is so popular and all these things that you've done online are so popular, because you can immediately relate, but it feels good to hear somebody else who's gone through the same thing you're going through with like an actual answer for it, which is nice. And which is what this book is. But then you've also gone through divorce.
Yeah.
After 21 years of marriage and adoptions and births. And so if you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I never, nobody goes into marriage thinking that they will ever be divorced. I think most of us, think, well, I'll be, in the nursing home with this person. And I certainly never thought I would be divorced from the person that I had children with. And it's not something that I ever wanted, but ultimately, it felt like it was something that needed to happen for the health of both myself and my kids. And so, yeah, we went through a relatively drama-free divorce. I'm, thankful for that. And so co-parenting is its own interesting game, man. I mean, it's a challenge, and my ex actually we lived together for a while, and then he lived in my back house. We have like a kind of like a, I don't know, a pool house. And so he lived back there for a while. So we kind of took it really slow, and we still try to spend holidays together. But all that being said, it's still really challenging. Like it is a very challenging situation to have gone through. And, I think I really had to modify some of my own feelings around what constituted a family, and just, giving myself the permission that, like, we're still a family. My kids and I are a complete family. I don't have to be married for us to go take Christmas photos together or take vacations together. We are a full family, like with me and the kids. It's enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. I think didn't you talk about like going on vacation for the first time or thinking about going on vacation, and just the idea of doing it alone and what that would look like and feel like. There's just so many new kind of situations you find yourself in, and then you have 4 children. So I can definitely understand at this point opting out of the sports just to not have the help with taking them, back and forth.
Yeah.
And you also, there's so much in this book, but another thing that I remembered and you talked about, and it kind of goes back to the judgment we were talking about earlier, but that open letter that we had all seen online about the woman at the park.
Yeah.
Who was looking at her cell phone, and your response to that?
Yeah, there was this open letter. I mean, this was like probably 7-8 years ago, but this
totally remember it.
Do you remember it? Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
It was a viral blog post of some blogger who had been at the park, and she had observed another mom who was on her cell phone while her daughter was playing, and she wasn't watching her daughter play. And I remember the first time I read it feeling like guilty, like, oh man, like I've done that. I've been that mom. And then I'm like, you know what? No. Like, that mom might have been on a work phone call. That mom might, she might be trying to juggle things. Like, I don't think anybody goes to the park thinking, like, I really want to be on the phone,
Right.
But even if she was, even if she was just browsing Facebook, like, who cares? Like, the thing is, like, this idea that modern mothers should just be standing in wait for their children, like a butler, right? Like, I'm just here whenever you need attention or want me to watch something. I'm just here. Like, mothers have had to work at something since the dawn of time, whether they were like gathering food or churning butter, or doing laundry. And so, now our conveniences are a little bit different. Like, we have a lot of modern conveniences. We can shove our stuff into a dishwasher, but we might have to pay a bill online, or we might need to check in with somebody via email, and a lot of the stuff we do is digital. And I think this whole idea that, like, we can't ever pull our attention away from our children is wild, and I think our children need our attention in certain times, and we should be intentional. But the idea that, like, if we miss a cartwheel, like, do you know how many cartwheels kids do? They're gonna do a lot of cartwheels. Like, I'll watch and I'll maybe even film like 4 or 5, and then I'm gonna go do something else. They don't need to, like, be a like clapping audience 100% of the time.
It's funny sorry. It was funny you bring this up, because I just had this conversation with my 15-year-old daughter this morning, because as I mentioned, I'm the crazy soccer club parent, and our practices are actually an hour each way. They're in Irvine. Ooh. And we live in San Diego. And she went back today, and we drove, and it took 5 hours of my day, and I have a job, and Lisa called, and I took a call from Lisa, and she didn't, and even though she loves Lisa, she did not want me, she was listening to music and she did not want me to take this call, and she tolerated it. But she was like, I could have listened to 3 songs. And when she got back in the car, I was asking her about the practice, and she's like, I just want to listen to music. And I'm like, girl, I'm not a taxi, like, this is my life too, and I'm just not here like to service you and to bring you here, and the world does not revolve around. And she snapped as soon as I said that to her, and she's a kind of more pragmatic kid. She was like, I'm sorry, and then she engaged me. But I told my husband when I got home, it's like she needs to be reminded that she's a very high level player, and I think because of that, we're always like, oh, you're such a great soccer, and so I think we're like, yeah, you're a great soccer player, but that doesn't mean you get to do what you want or be who you want or whatever. And it's kind of like this weird balance. So it's just funny as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about the conversation I had with her.
Yeah, and I think that when kids know that they aren't, kids need to know that they are the center of our universe, but not all the time, right?
Right.
Like, they do need to know that we are separate human beings with our own feelings. Because at the same time they're trying to individuate from us, they also need to see us as people who have needs,
Yes.
right? And so, sometimes that looks like mom needs a nap. Sometimes that looks like mom needs to sit on Facebook and zone out, or mom needs to call a friend, or mom needs to make a work call. And I do think that when we develop those boundaries with our kids to say, I'm going to take some space or take some time, it's actually empathy building. Like, it's not empathy building to just sit and be 100% available, because then what that teaches them is like, I'm the center of the world, the whole world. Like, the world revolves around me, and that like kind of breeds entitlement, I mean, we probably all know those parents who are just like, my child is the greatest ever. And then the kids are like, hell yeah. Right? I mean, I think that they do learn empathy when they understand that, like, they're not the king and queen that,
Right.
spins around.
Right. This has happened to me the other night with my 9-year-old, or the other day, because right now, she hasn't been in school for 3 months, and now it's summer, and my husband and I have he lives in Chicago part of the time, and so I'm here by myself a lot with her, and I'm trying to, we have a book launching in 3 weeks, and I just was about to lose it because she wanted me to have another friend come over. And I just had to stop and tell her, like, Harper, I need to explain to you, like, I have a job, and when I take you to the pool, I'm actually working while I'm watching you guys swim, because ordinarily you would be in a camp or somewhere during the summer, during the day, so that I could do my job. And right now I'm having to juggle this. And once I did have this conversation with her, she did, just like Liz's daughter, she did kind of snap out of it. It's like, oh, okay. Like, they forget, I think, that we actually, no matter what age they are, obviously, that we also have our own lives that we're trying to balance.
Jen is saying here, I always say, I am not your employee. Jen, I think I've actually said that too, and also like Uber driver and those things, because I do think our generation, it can be the helicopter generation a little bit, because we were all latchkey kids. Yeah. Lisa and I are in our mid-40s. We were all latchkey kids, and I think we're all trying to completely write it the other way and be like, you will never want for anything, you will never be like, you won't wear a key around your neck, I will be at home to let you in the door every day and tell you how wonderful you are, like, but I think that breeds problems as well. So
I'll tell you what, though, the pandemic, if it's taught us one thing, it's the kids. We've had to all work around our kids, right? I mean, there's no more of that, like, well, I'll get done with my job before you walk through the door from school. It's like, no, like, I'm going to be, you're going to be here doing your stuff. I'm here doing my stuff. It's sort of forced, I think for working moms, it's sort of, my kids, I think, never really even understood what I did all day, Like, I remember one time my daughter, she was younger, I mean, she was like 8, but she was like, Mommy just plays computer games all day. And I was like, I've literally never played a game on my computer. Like, never. That has never happened. Right. But that's what you think. Like, that I'm playing a game. I don't even know a computer game. But, it's kind of forced, I think, some empathy for our kids to see, like, oh, we really are doing things all day. Like, we really do have things we have to do and complete.
Right. There's a question from Susan. She says, how do your kids handle your writing about them and your experience parenting them? Your book sounds great. Want to read it. Oh, Susan's always so great. Thanks for coming, Susan.
Well, that's a great question. You know, it's funny. My kids are largely uninterested in my writing. Like, I think that they're just typical teens and it doesn't really affect them. What's funny is the thing that affects them is they have friends who follow me on Instagram, which is weird. And you know, their friends will talk about like, oh, your mom posted something. So they're interested in that. But I think this book, it's so nebulous. Like only one of my kids has wanted to read it at all. And I did go through most of the stories that I felt like this could be embarrassing, or like with my adopted kids, like, are you okay with me sharing these details? And they were like, I don't care. I really don't care. And I mean, one funny story, I mean, just to reiterate how self-absorbed teens can be, developmentally appropriate, but I had dedicated the book to the kids, and so I had this moment where I'm like, hey guys, I want to read you the dedication, and I read it to them, and it's, you know, something to the effect of like, you know, I love being your mom, it's the best ride of my life, and my daughter was like, Mom, get a life.
That's my daughter.
Like she was just like, and
someday,
you know,
she'll appreciate it.
I know. I also think it's weird, like, I don't know if this is true for you guys, but because I'm a writer, a lot of my friends are writers. You know, you just automatically, you have friends that are in the same business that you're in. I'm sure that's true if you're a realtor. You know, you end up being in friendships with other people who do the same job. And so they just think that, I think my kids think that moms just write books. Like that's just like, yeah, everybody's mom has a book, right? Like, I don't think they understand it at all. Like, they're just like, whatever, mom's book thing, you know?
Yeah, they'll get out in the real world and figure that one out.
I know, maybe.
Especially if any of them are aspiring writers.
Yeah.
Figure out how difficult that feat actually is.
But at present, they're just like, I don't care. Don't post an embarrassing photo of me on Instagram where my friends actually are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today. Can you tell everyone where we can find you online and on social media?
Yeah, so my personal accounts on social media are at Kristen Howerton, just my first and last name. And then Rage Against the Minivan it's the new title for the old Asshole Parents account, because there were issues with it being a curse word. So if you want to look at funny parenting memes and photos of tantrums of toddlers and, you know, things like that, that's all at Rage Against the Minivan.
That is awesome. Well, it's been, I could talk to you all day.
Oh, I could
I'm
too.
sure you have places to be.
No,
I didn't want to spoil too much of the book, so people will go, you know, there's still so much more in the book, you guys. So definitely get it.
So I'll throw it to Julie in a second. I do want to remind everybody, on Thursday we have Sarah Ackerman, and it's a historical fiction novel I think everyone will love talking about. And Julie, I'm going to throw to you, girl.
Excellent. Okay, Kristen, thank you so much. Again, It's Rage Against the Minivan. So it's at Warwick's. You can order it there. I put the link is up there for everybody. It was such a pleasure. I mean, even I'm old, and I say, see, some of our watchers might have older children too. These issues are universal, man. It's been with kids forever. So I can even relate as having old kids. It's like, oh man, it's the same stuff going on. I tell you.
Never changes.
Never changes. The teenagers are teenagers, I tell you. Anyway, so great having you. Hope to have you again at some point. If you're ever down in San Diego, would love to have a live event with you. So again, everybody, any way you can get your books, always think of Warwick's.
And one really quick plug we have an event coming up with Warwick's on July 15th, and we can have 20 people inside Warwick's. It'll be in-person event, but it's ticketed. So if you are interested, if you're local in San Diego and you want to come, you can go to lizandlisa.com/events, and the ticket link is in there, and the first 20 people will get tickets. And after that, we will be, it'll be virtual too. We'll have it on Facebook Live, but if you want to be in person, we'd love to see you there. So Anyway, all right. Well, it was great seeing you guys, Kristen. Such a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kristen.
So much success with your book. And if we're ever in Orange County, I think now we're going to stalk you to have a drink with us.
Do
So,
it.
sorry. Yeah, would love that. All right. Everybody have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.